Hi y'all, it's Kathy. Good morning. Well, it's about 9:56 according to this little camera here. And I was going to start at 10 o'clock this morning with our new series called Encounters with Spirits and Other Miraculous Stories. And the goal is for us to share the experiences that we've had with, angels or spirits or whatever type of encounters we've had in our own personal lives. And I'm going to start by telling some of my stories. I've been telling them on other sites, and people have asked me to tell more of my stories in person, so that's why I'm doing this. Anyway, I'm not really going to get started until right at 10, and every single thing that could have gone wrong this morning did, because I was going to have this out in my little workshop. I can see y'all. I can't see y'all, so maybe I'll take my glasses off. I was trying to see what time it was. Anyway, I was going to have this out in my little shop this morning. If any of you guys know me, which several of y'all do, I've been working on crafts, and my husband's been building a garage for the last year. We finally got the garage built, and he got his cars and all of his stuff moved in there. And so I got to start working on my little she shed that I call my cottage. And so I've got it about finished, but I've been painting, and I had it all set up, and I was going to go ahead and record out there this morning, but the electricity went off. So every single thing that can go wrong this morning, my pets acted up, everybody needed attention. I couldn't get ready. So every time you do something for the Lord, or, that you feel called to do, well, every single thing is going to go wrong to keep you from doing it. Just do it anyway, even if you have to sit in the dark house. I turned all the lights on to do it because, there's a reason that you're getting fought against so hard, and that's because maybe you'll be able to help someone with what you're doing. So anyway, I'm going to tell you first off that, I am a Christian, and the things that happen to me, I feel, are more things that happen like in the Bible, prophetic type of things where people got messages from the Lord and were able to share it with people and stuff like that. That's my life. I know some of y'all have other experiences that are not, and you're not a Christian, and you don't believe in God or any of that stuff. Well, that's your journey, and to me, it's up to God to change that if He wants to change that in you. And I hope that some of the testimonies or the stories that you hear on this site will help you to see that there's more to life than just the natural life that we see every day as we're going along our way. Anyway, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about me because some of y'all don't know me. And I'm an author. I'm looking over there because I'm hoping that I have some of my artwork so that I can show y'all. I'm an artist and I'm an author. And good morning. I see some of y'all are watching, and I appreciate it. I'm not going to be able to answer a lot of questions while I'm telling the story, but at the end of the story, I'll take some questions and, try to be kind. And if you don't believe, I was going to have a sign up behind me that said, "When pigs fly," because I know that some of y'all think, oh, that'll be true when pigs fly. Well, I was going to have that sign up, but I wasn't able to go out to my shop today. So anyway, but many of you have had your own experiences, so you believe completely. Anyway, a little bit about myself. I'm an author. I've written 4 books. The only one I have with me is a little kid's book that I wrote. But basically, I wrote one called Surrounded by Spirits, and it's the true story of the happenings that I had in a beauty salon that I owned. And it turned out that we had a spirit present in the salon, and I was scared to death and called all the preachers and did all the things, to try to get it to leave, and it didn't leave. And so I had to deal with that for 2 years, and I wound up doing an investigation, and that's my first book. It's called Surrounded by Spirits. And then I wrote another book called Entangled in Desire because all of the ladies at the shop wanted me to write a romance story. So I sort of wrote a story about a romance, but there's angels and demons involved, and persuading people on what they do. And then I wrote another book called Camouflage Angel. I actually have a story behind that book, but I'm going to save it for another day. And it is about a society that, a little town that has evil within a secret society, and the townspeople are called to come and fight against the evil society within their town. But I have a little deeper story behind that book that I'll have to tell y'all on another day. And then I wrote a children's book. I hate to say it's called The Monster Bash. And that is because my grandson was given a assignment at school, and his teacher said that he had to write a scary story. Well, that was not good with me. I didn't want him writing a scary story, but my daughter said, well, Mother, he has to do it, and you're the writer, so you need to go ahead and help him write this story. So he came over and we sat down, and basically I said, well, if you had to write a scary story, what would you write? And of course, being a child, he thought of Grim Reaper and Jackal and all the scary things. And so I tried to write a funny, scary story to help him write a funny, scary story with all of his characters that he came up with. And so that's where we got this little book. And it turns out it's kind of cute after all. So that's about me. And I'm fixing to work on a table for my patio, for my shop out there. And I'm going to be doing little plates and things, sort of a mosaic type table for my patio. So that's my hobbies. And I'm a painter. So I do paint classes. Here's a couple of my paintings. There's a painting. I'm just going to show y'all a couple so you can see. And I do little paint parties. And so I'm busy. And I save feral cats. It have 7 now. And so that's what I do in my free time. Oh, I need to show y'all my cow painting. Isn't that so cute? Can you see? Isn't that so cute? Anyway, it's a lot of fun. All the ladies in the area and I get together and do paint parties. Anyway, so my hope is that you will have a story that you would like to share with everyone, but I'd like for you to send it to me in an email if you do, or give me a synopsis of it, just a little paragraph telling me what it's about. And, I'll probably call you and speak to you on the phone about it before we actually share it on here. And you can message me on Messenger, or you can contact me by email, Kathy with a C, C-A-T-H-Y, Cockrum, C-O-C-K-R-U-M, 123 @gmail.com. If you want to give me a little paragraph synopsis of, a summary of what your little story is about, so that I can make sure that it's something that I would, be able to air on here, because we don't want to be too offensive to anyone. Most people just have good stories. But anyway, today I think I'm going to tell the story about 2 customers that I had. I've really been praying about which story to tell, but to give you an idea of what my stories are like. As I said, I had a hair salon that I had a spirit in, and it turned out to be a lady. And some of y'all don't believe in that at all, but in the Bible even says that I saw a man, someone walking as a man, and they call it an angel, but it has no wings. So I'm assuming that it's a saint of God rather than an angel. But anyway, that's sort of the same thing that happens to me. I see people that look as live as you and me, and I can't, if you were standing next to them, I wouldn't be able to tell if you were the person, the real person living, or if you were the spirit person sometimes. So that's sort of what happened to me in the story that I'm going to tell today. And that is that I had a customer who, I was a hairdresser, and I had a customer who had lost her son. And it was really sad. And we have a lot of compassion and empathy for people who lose, especially their children. And she came in one day, and actually I had started doing this other lady's hair first, and she was new to me. When she came into my salon, she had really long hair, and she had regrowth like mine that needed to be touched up. And when I saw her, she said, can I get my hair done today? I want to get the works, I want to get it cut, I want to get it colored, I want to get it highlighted, everything. And there was nobody there but me that day. And I said, well, I would love to help you, but I'm already booked with other clients. So if I could, I would, I'd like to make you an appointment for another day with one of the other girls, maybe tomorrow. And she said, well, she sat there and looked at me for a minute, and then she said, well, I'd like for you to do my hair if you don't mind. And I said, well, I'm booked for the next 6 weeks. So, but something just touched me about her, and I thought, you know what, I'll try to fit her in between other customers. And to tell you the truth, that's something I tried not to do because it always made me run behind. But anyway, I decided I was going to fit her in between other customers. So I said, well, come back tomorrow at 12, because that's when I was going to take a lunch for about 30 minutes. And I said, I'll try to work you in. I have another color going on, and I'll try to work you in while I'm doing her hair. So if you don't mind waiting, while I'm processing her hair, I can work with you on that. So she said, okay. And she came back the next day, and I was working on her hair. And as I was working on her hair, I got to know a little about her. She was talking about her grandson. She said, he didn't mean to be rude or disrespectful to me, but he said that I don't look like all the other mothers at his school, and he'd like for me to do something so that I would look a little younger, like maybe color my hair, because she did have, some gray roots that were kind of long and everything. And she said, so I decided that I would come and, get a makeover. And I thought, well, that's really rude, but I didn't say anything about it. And as we talked, I wanted to say, well, where is his mother? Why are you raising him? Because I'm hateful like that sometimes. And I think the worst of people when I haven't got their story. Sorry, y'all, I've got a hair getting in my eye and it's driving me crazy. Anyway, she said, I said, well, I was going to say, well, where's his mom and why are you having to raise him? But thank the Lord, he kind of shuts me up sometimes, and I didn't say anything, because as she continued to talk, she revealed to me that his mother had been murdered, and that was her daughter. And she said his mother was murdered, and she said by his father. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad he has you to take care of him. And so then I understood. So I had her hair color on, and we had gotten to know each other a little bit. And as I was fixing to put her under the dryer, the next client came in that had already had an appointment, and she was a regular, and I had known her for a couple of years. And she came in, and she just looked so depressed. And I said, how you doing? I'm going to use a different name because I don't try to really identify people that I'm talking about because, for their privacy and just because. But anyway, I said, well, how you doing? Nancy. And she said, I'm not doing too good. And I guess she thought I knew what was wrong, but I didn't. And like I said, I'd known her for a couple of years, but I didn't really know much about her personal life. She was kind of a more private person. And I felt bad for her, but I didn't know how to help her in any way. So she sat down, and I started putting color on her hair, and she had something in her hands. And she said, Kathy, I know that you sometimes know things about people, and I wondered if I could give you this tape and have you listen to it and tell me what you think about it. And I said, well, what is it? And she also handed me a rosary. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, well, it's a tape that was on my son's phone when he died. And I want you to listen to it and see if you can tell me, what happened to him. And I said, well, I have never done anything like that before. I said, I just usually, if I see something or whatever, I try to deal with it, but I don't try to, I pray for people, I pray about things, and maybe God tells me something, but I don't try to know things just by listening to a tape or what have you. And she said, well, if you don't mind just listening to it and see what you think about it. And I said, I don't know, Nancy, because I was really leery about doing that. And she said, Kathy, you don't understand. I just can't stand it. And I said, well, I understand that. I said, but when you can't stand it, Nancy, you just need to turn to the Lord and say, God, you know what? I can't stand this. In that moment that you can't stand it, I said, you need to turn to the Lord and say, I can't stand it. You're going to have to stand it for me. And I believe in that moment that God will come to you and give you a peace to get you to the next moment. I said, because, you know, there are times, especially recently, I've learned in grief, there are times when you can't stand it, and you have to just lean on God and allow him to carry you to the next moment. And it takes a long time sometimes. I've been in grief for my parents, and for my parents for the last 2 years, actually, since they passed, and I've had a real hard time with it. And tell everybody how to do it. I did not do it well. Then I felt like I wasn't being a good griever, like the Bible talks about. And I was like, I can't stand it either. But I actually had to be put on some medication so that I could just not have the anxiety of just not understanding what all happened and all the things. So I certainly understand grief a lot more now than I used to. But anyway, she was at that point where she couldn't stand it. And I said, I'm really sorry. And I said, I didn't know how to help her really. And so I said, well, I put her color on, and I took the little tape recording that she gave me, and I took the rosary beads, and I put them, aside. And then I told her, well, I got her color on. I cut her hair, and then I was going to get her color on. So I said, I'm going to run back there and mix up your color. I had the other lady, processing with her color. So I ran to the back room to mix up her color, and I heard them talking to one another. And I thought, well, it's kind of interesting that they're both here at the same time, and they both lost, children, because the first lady had lost her daughter, and the other lady had lost her son. So they were in there talking, and I heard them talking about horses. So I thought, well, it's good, they're getting to know one another, and I'll go back here and mix up the color. So I went back to the back room of the hair salon and mixing the color. And then when I got finished, I came back into the room, and it was like this is where my story gets a little fantastical, okay? It was like, and I'm telling the truth. And, maybe some of y'all have experienced something like this. And I could tell you a passage in the Bible where there's something like this that happens. But anyway, I walked into the room, and there was like a cloud. It looked like a white cloud sitting in my salon. I could not see them. I could not see the furniture. It just looked like a white cloud. Somebody had opened the door, and a white cloud had come into my beauty shop. And I just stopped, and I stood there, and I started praying. I was like, Lord, I do not know what is going on here. I said, but help me with these ladies, help me say what I need to say, and keep me from saying, don't let me say what I'm not supposed to say. And so I waited for a second because I really didn't know what to do. And then as I stood there, the cloud started to dissipate. And I was looking at them, waiting for somebody to act shocked and say something about this cloud. And then I realized that they did not see this, that I was the only one that saw it. And actually, there was a little girl sitting up in the front of the salon. She always came in to watch the TVs that I had in the salon because she got bored over where she was, and she would come over and sit in my shop and watch TV. And so it's funny, she wound up being a part of some of the experiences that I had. But anyway, she was sitting up front, and she didn't seem disturbed, and the ladies didn't seem disturbed, so I was the only one seeing this. So I thought, this is some supernatural thing that God's doing, and I need to pay attention and do what I need to do. So I went over there, and I'm listening to them talk to try to find out what they're talking about, and they're talking about psychics. And the one lady is saying that, she said, Kathy, I know you're not going to approve of this, but I'm thinking about consulting a psychic. And I said, well, who am I to approve of anything? I said, I know that there are people who can see and hear things that other people can't see and hear. But I am concerned that you'll get connected with someone that is doing it for the wrong motive. And I do believe that you can get a word for someone, a word that would help them to know what to do about something. And I do believe that there are people who can see and hear things that other people can't. And so I know there is truth in that, but I know that there's a lot of fakes and a lot of people who just do things to make money or whatever. And I'm not saying that a psychic person shouldn't make money. Hey, whatever you're spending your time doing, you need to be paid for it. If I was cleaning your house, I need to be paid for it. If I'm a counselor and I'm sitting talking to you, I should be paid for my time. I think that people should be paid for their time. But if they're milking you just to make money out of you because they have you in an emotional situation and they're feeding on that, then that's wrong. So you have to be discerning. And I said, and I think that also the words we use, are they a psychic? What is a psychic? Are they a prophet? It seems that the gifts are the same. It's just who you serve with your gift. So that's what I'm going to say there. And I think we should train more of the psychics, that they were given a gift, and maybe they should use it to, help and glorify, and not for self-gain. But anyway, that's that situation. So I said, who am I to judge anything? It's up to you, and you need to, make up your own decisions. And I said, but I just would warn you to be careful. Well, the other lady listening said, well, I hate to dispute your word, Kathy, but that's how we found my daughter's killer. And she said, I went to a psychic, and she told me that that there was a shirt that my daughter had on, or that he had on when he had killed my daughter, and it was in the bottom of his closet. And so she got the police to get a warrant, and they went in and they searched and they found the shirt, and that's how the man got put in prison for killing her daughter. And I said, as I said, there's people who really are able to see. I call them seers. I call myself a seer. And in the Bible, before people were called prophets and prophetesses, they were called seers. But actually, there's a little bit of a difference between a seer and a prophet. So that's just something you'd have to research and study. But anyway, after she said that, I said, well, I'm really sorry, Nancy. And, we talked about her child and everything. And she said that he had been at his apartment. She had spoken to him earlier in the day. And then when she tried to call him again later that night, he didn't answer. And it turned out he had had some friends over to the apartment. And she thinks something happened during that time. But he wound up being found in his apartment the next day. And he was passed away. And so I said, I'm sorry, and I'll pray for you and all that. So she went home. We finished up. I finished up with them. And when I got home, I sat down and I listened to the tape. And the tape was, you could hear him pick up the phone every once in a while, like he was trying to make a call. Maybe he was trying to call 911 or something. And then it would hang up, and then a little while later you would hear him pick up. So you know that he was having a struggle, but you don't really know, what had happened. Well, all of a sudden I started getting all of these images in my mind, and I saw 3 people, and they were there with him in his apartment, and they were all drinking. They were horsing around, having fun, loved each other to death, having a good time. You know how boys are. My son was anyway. And they were roughhousing and all that. And I saw them pick him up and slam his head. This is graphic, y'all. Slam his head into the sheetrock, the wall. And then he passed out, and they were drunk. They were trying to get him up and everything. Well, they just left him laying there. But actually, they put a towel on the wall, and they moved the sofa where you couldn't see where the break in the sheetrock, and where his head had hit the 2x4 is what happened. And so anyway, they put a towel on that, and they slid the couch over, and they left him there, but he was alive when they left. And so they left, but the next day, nobody could get a hold of him, and they had tried calling him. The mom had tried calling him, nobody could get a hold of him. And so they had the people that run the apartment complex to come over and go in, and they found him there. Well, what the young man was telling me, I wasn't going to tell you all this. See, this is a God thing, because I wasn't going to give you all this information right now. But anyway, I was going to tell you all a different story. But I prayed about this all night, so just, which story do you want me to go with? So this is the one. And I guess this is so you can more or less see how I am. And it's not about me, though. It's about what God can do through you, okay? And I hate to say that, because I know some of y'all are plain atheists and you don't even believe in that. Well, believe what you want to, but I'm just telling you my experiences, my testimony, my story, and so I'm telling it. Well, anyway, the young man that had passed away was telling me that this could have just as well happened to any one of the other ones. They are my friends. We were goofing around. It was an accident. They didn't mean to do this to me. I don't want my mom to do anything to them, because I could have just as well done, that to one of them. We were all doing the same thing. I said, I talked back, I said, you realize that she is going to do everything she can to press charges on them and everything else, because she's so upset, about what happened. And he said, well, I want her to understand that it could have just as well been me that did it to them. He said, just tell her. And I was like, I don't want to tell her, but if you knew how upset she was, it was really difficult for me to tell her this. But anyway, I just said, I'll see what happens, So that was that, and he was at perfect peace. And y'all get your water. Get your water or coffee to drink in these stories. Anyway, so the next day, I guess, I called her and I said, I listened to your tape, and do you want to come back by and get your things? So she did. And I sat her down and I said, listen, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and you will have to decide, what you want to do about it. So I sat her down and I told her everything that had happened and what my experience was with the young man. And it seemed, she said, I know you're telling the truth, because when we went back to the apartment, when they were cleaning the apartment, they found that there was a towel on the wall, and they found a hole in the wall behind the couch, but we didn't know how it had gotten there. And she said, so I know you're telling the truth. And she said, and I will talk to the sheriff about the other boys. Well, I didn't know what she was going to do, but it turned out that they didn't ever file any charges, and the boys came and confessed actually what had happened even before she had contacted the sheriff. The boys had come and confessed what had happened, and I don't really know what they did with the boys, but there wasn't any formal charges brought against them, which wound up to be a good thing, because like I said, it was just friends playing and they didn't mean to do it. So I don't know, that's between the justice system and them. But anyway, that turned out okay. Well, that was later on that I found out all that out. I sort of jumped ahead in the story. So anyway, that same day, when I was oh, I forgot to tell y'all something. This is what happens when you're not writing your story down. Let me go backwards. The only reason that I listened to the tape in the first place is because when I was still in the shop, when the cloud had appeared, this is like the biggest part of the story, and I forgot to tell y'all. This is why I always write books, because I can't remember the sequence of things. Anyway, when we were back there and they were talking to one another, and the cloud appeared, and then the cloud left, and then she's telling me she wants me to listen to the tape about her son and everything. And I told her that she needed to seek God and all that. Well, she left, and this is the part I forgot to tell you. I started highlighting the other lady's hair. I had already done the base color, and now I was putting the highlights in. And my station was faced towards the corner of the room. And as I was highlighting, I had a mirror, and I could see whoever was walking in the front door. Well, I was highlighting this lady's hair, trying to get the bleach on the foil and all of that. And I'm looking up in the mirror, and I see this young man walking from the front area towards me. And I didn't recognize him at all. And so I'm getting the foil in, but I keep looking up, and I see that he is walking really fast towards me. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with him? Why is he walking so fast? And I'm trying to get the bleach on the foil first, though, and get it sealed up. And right when I get the bleach on the foil and get it sealed up, I turn, and he is all the way to me, and he looks at me right in my eyes, and as if he's waiting for me to say something to him or acknowledge him in some way. And I just looked at him in his eyes, and when he realized that I could see him there, he turned and he brushed my shoulder. As he turned, I felt him turn. He brushed my shoulder and he went into the back room of my hair salon where I had just been in there mixing color. And I thought, how rude. You don't just come into somebody's business and walk past them and go into a private room. Wasn't a room for customers. That was a private room, where we mix colors and everything. And I thought, that was so rude. Who is that? What are they doing? And I said, hey, and I leaned around and I didn't see I had turned the light off in there and everything, and I didn't see him back there. I didn't see him go out the back door or anything. I couldn't figure out who he was or what he was doing. And I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, hey, to the little girl up in the front, I said, who was that just came in here? Does he work for your dad? And she said, nobody came in here. And I thought, oh boy, I am really losing it this time. And the lady in my chair said, oh no, I saw him too, and I've never seen anything. I said, I wonder what he's doing. And I said, hey, and I started to go back there. And the minute I took like 2 steps to go to the back room, I felt somebody poke me right in my chest, like, stop. And they said, don't go back there. Well, I didn't know who it was that poked me and said that to me, but I wasn't going back there now. So I stopped and I didn't go back there the rest of the day. And I thought, that must be her son, That's all I could figure. I mean, there was a white cloud, and then I see this person that was physical, that touched me and went in my back room. And like I said, I tried to rationalize it and think maybe it's the landlord's worker because he has tools back there. He's going to get tools. That I had an alarm on the back door. If they would have opened the door, the alarm would have gone off. So no way. He never came back, and the bean told me not to go back there. I didn't go back there for the rest of the day. I just washed all of my bowls out in the sinks up front, in the shampoo bowls, because I wasn't going back there. Anyway, and then that's the whole reason I went ahead and listened to that tape that night, was because I had that experience with that young man. And then after that all happened, let's see. Hold on, let me think. Oh, she showed me a picture of her son, and it was the same young man that I had seen walking through the shop. So y'all can tell me why. I don't know why. I just think that God had to make me want to listen to that tape, because I was really leery about doing that, because I have not been taught or trained. I go to church all the time, and I have not been taught or trained in my gift, and I've had it since I was little. When I was 5 years old, I went in my grandma's bedroom to tell a spirit to leave her house, and I believe that it did. And I have never been trained, but I've read my Bible, and I can't do church here. We're telling ghost stories, but I have my reasons and my studies that I'm working out my own, salvation. So we'll just leave it at that. And what was I going to tell you next? Anyway, that's one of my spirit stories. That's one of my encounters with spirits, and it turned out that the son actually looked just like the dad. Also, I got to meet him, and and after this all happened with her, she wound up helping with her church more and getting more involved with youth and things like that. So it all turned out, to help her life. And it seems like every time anything like this happens, it helps heal the person that is in grief. So it reminds me of that, binding up the brokenhearted and setting the captives free, because they're captive in their grief. So I think that's why this happens. But anyway, that's my story for today. I have several, and I promise to be a little more organized next time. It's just that today, my husband was like, just cancel it. And I said, no, because, I told everybody I was going live. So anyway, every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. So, and that's the story. I was going to tell a story called The Lady in Pink. Some of y'all know that story, but maybe I'll tell that one next time. Anyway, I'm going to try to look at this phone and see if y'all have any questions. And if you if you're watching a replay or whatever, you can leave me questions, and between this week and the next time we have a live, I'll try to answer them. And I love you too, Samantha. That's my niece. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed the story. And, you know, I have a sister that prays for me because she's worried about me, all this stuff. But I will tell y'all that, you know, there's all kinds of different things that happen in the spiritual that we don't understand. It's a mystery, so we just have to kind of pray about it and go on. And if God wants somebody changed, he'll change them. But anyway, I appreciate y'all watching. I'm going to look here and see if y'all have any... Hi, Janice! You made it! See if y'all have any questions. Do y'all have any questions about my story? I know I messed up on my story. See? Y'all can tell your story. And if you mess up, it's okay. Because we'll go back and figure it out before we go on to the next one. Does anybody have any questions for me? I can actually see the comments now. Did your parents okay? I'm glad you went live. Thank you, Samantha. She's like one of my biggest fans, y'all. She's just like me, too. Anyway, well, listen, I'm going to let y'all go. So, but I will look at my messages. And if y'all have any questions for me, just leave them here and I'll look at them and try to answer them before next week. I may even personal message you if you ask a question that I feel like I need to answer right away or something. I'll do that. Anyway, that's it. We're just going to basically come on and tell the experiences that we've had. And I'm hoping that some of y'all maybe would like to even let me come to your house or you come to my house and share, you know, your stories. I don't know what all we're going to do with this. I'm just kind of going with the flow. So if you missed the story, you can just rewind and go back to the first. I'm pretty sure they'll have it on for at least 30 days, something like that. I'm just learning how all this works, to tell you the truth. I was going to do it on my computer, and it wouldn't even let me go on my own page. So I told you, everybody was trying to stop me from doing this. So anyway, y'all, I want to hear some of your stories, so let me know if you have any, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.